Welcome to Fantasy Football Today on CBS Sports Network. We're presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. I'm Dave Richard, joined by Top's very own Katie Mox, and Jamie Eisenberg's on the end. If you had looked at Jamie's rankings, you would have known that Courtland Sutton was not a top 36 wide receiver. 0 points for Courtland Sutton. If you had to use a word to describe Thursday's game, what word would you use, Jamie?
Poop.
Okay, Katie?
I'd say boring, but poop I think might be a little bit more accurate. It was...
Especially if you're a Saints fan.
We've had... Well, yeah. But I feel like we've had some good Thursday night games this year, which is usually not the case. And this was the traditional, horrible, boring poop Thursday night game.
And the Broncos seem to always be involved in these poop games. I was going to say finally, because finally Javonte Williams had a big game for fantasy managers. We'll talk about that in a second. We'll get through all the injuries, starts and sits, Katie's favorite player props. There's a lot of them this week. And we'll answer your post from X. But first, let's just get this game out of the way. It's Denver 33, New Orleans 10. Can either of you name the players in this game who scored more than 10 PPR points? Javonte.
I was going to say Javonte will, yeah.
So she knew Javonte. Jamie didn't even know Javonte. I can't believe it. Bo Nix did.
Cedric Wilson.
There it is.
And the Broncos defense.
And the Broncos defense. So that's it. There's
and Will Lutz.
3 players. Oh, yeah, Will Lutz did do it. See, I'm shortchanging him. I don't even care about the kickers or anything like that.
Jamie might know something.
Do you know that Javonte Williams' status for Week 8 is good because he's taking on Carolina? Do you love him in that matchup, and what do you do with him moving forward?
You have to love him in that matchup. I mean, the Panthers just bleed fantasy points to running backs, and he's coming off a strong game. He's actually been good 2 of his previous 3. He faced the Chargers in Week 6, and that's a really good run defense. Be careful if you're a James Conner fantasy manager. I think we'll see Javonte have another strong game against Carolina, and then you can try and trade him. It's just one of those situations where you want to sell high on a player that I think still has some competition. Now, Estime's fumble was bad. Jaleel McLaughlin has not turned into the player that all the Broncos beat writers hyped him up to be, because remember, the preseason, the offseason before training camp, he's going to be the Broncos' best running back. Well, clearly that's not the case.
No.
So it's Javonte's job, but he's not going to be this productive. He's not going to have this good of a schedule. He does have to face Baltimore and Kansas City coming up in that schedule as well. So that's not going to be good matchups for him.
But at least we know in Week 8 he's got a good matchup. Same thing for the Broncos defense. Courtland Sutton, droppable at this point. I think you'd agree with that, Jamie. Just can't trust him anymore.
He's definitely on that list. You know, he's probably not the first player you want to drop, but he's definitely in the top 3. And if he's the worst player on your team, you can drop him.
There was a late defensive touchdown that was loved by people who had the Broncos DST, and then an offensive touchdown, both of them coming in the last 4 minutes of the game, and it left some people, Katie, feeling a little unlucky maybe.
Yeah, that was going to be my takeaway for the game, is that there was either a bad beat or a backdoor cover, depending on what side that you were on. Certainly the Sharps had more of the bad beat. I would say most of the money last night, according to our friends over at Action Network, were on the under of this game. Totals at 37. 62% of bettors, however, were on this over. And like you just said, 4 minutes left in the game. You see Rattler take that really tough sack, ends up fumbling the ball. They run it back for a touchdown. And then they put Jake Haener, and all of a sudden they allow him to air it out, which was kind of confusing because they were running the ball the whole time. He gets that touchdown. Big win for the public. And sorry, Sharps, you lost some money on this one.
Really brutal, but that's all that we really need to say about this matchup between the Saints and the Broncos. Hopefully it's the worst game of week number 7.
Oh, God.
Let's roll into the injuries. There's a ton of them, but not really at the quarterback position. The one named Anthony Richardson. He practiced in full all week long. He's expected to start for the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Dolphins. Not a bad fantasy option. We will talk about him later on in the show. So with that in mind, let's just move right to the running backs, because there are a lot of names and a lot of moving parts at this position. You see Jonathan Brooks still not practicing on Thursday, but he is on the way back, could potentially be activated within the next week or 2. But it is chicken soup for my soul to see Nick Chubb's name on this list. I would be a little bit worried about how much he'll play for the Browns this week, but boy, they sure need him. Their offensive identity could really move on to him.
Do they still make those books, Chicken Soup for the Soul?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm dating myself with that.
No, it meant something to me. It meant something to me. I was just curious if they still...
Does it mean anything to you, Katie, that Devon Achane is going to be back this week?
It does, but it's a little bit tricky, right? It's hard to predict his usage. So his rushing yards prop is at 44.5, which seems kind of low. Okay, yeah, Jamie's given us a thumbs up to go higher in this one. Yes, I would probably lean over that, but where I think the value is on HN is actually in the anytime touchdown market. Right now, he's priced at plus 145, and y'all know last year 11 touchdowns in 11 games. You could not see a plus 145 for Devon HN. And let's say he goes off on this game and he goes over that and gets a touchdown. We might not see plus 145 again. So when we're looking at him, yes, let's lean over on the rushing yard props, but I think we have some value in the anytime touchdown market.
Someone slightly less exciting, Jamie, is Travis Etienne. Looks like he's going to be a game time decision. What's his impact on Take Bigsby for their matchup against the Patriots? It's a really good matchup.
Yeah, it's just got the alert that Shane Steichen has ruled out Jonathan Taylor, so another running back injury. Okay. I'm sorry, who are you asking about?
The Jaguars running back.
So ETN did show up at practice again, limited. Doug Peterson said he's going to be a game time decision. Thankfully, it's the early game in London, so we'll know if he's going to be out there for fantasy managers. At this point, you'd rather see ETN sit just because it allows Tank Bigsby the opportunity to be the lead guy there, because if ETN's back, we get the crowded situation that we saw last time, and then if he leaves the game and you did not start Bigsby, you'll be upset about it. You also lose the ability to, in a desperate situation, look at Dearness Johnson. I hate when these guys are less than 100% and there's so much vagueness going on of week to week. Then he shows up at practice. They're in London. I don't think all the beat writers are there. So it's just all this confusion that's happening for fantasy managers. I would just like to see ETN ruled out, get healthy, have a good finishing kick to the season.
And no big deal. You just have to wake up super early Sunday morning to find out whether or not ETN's even active for the game and whether or not that impacts your lineup. But the situation that you
it's just those West Coasters, right? You know, all your people back out.
Me on tops. I have a 5:15 a.m. call time, so I'll know.
Yeah. You'll be up. Katie will let us know. That's cool. Ramondre Stevenson didn't get back into practice until Friday. What do you think about his chances to play?
The fact that he made the trip is encouraging. The fact that he practiced on Friday is encouraging. You know, if I were Ramondre and I'm looking at, I could skip the Houston game. That's a tough matchup. I'll come back for Jacksonville. That's an easy matchup. If he plays, he's a must-start guy. Just the Jaguars' defense has been so bad against running backs. You would like to have him out there. If he's not, then Antonio Gibson's a decent, start. Worst case is a flex play. Could be a number 2 running back. He did not do great last week against Houston, but he had over 15 total touches. That's hard to overlook in this matchup, so I wouldn't mind Gibson if Stevenson's out.
Katie, 49ers expert. If there's no Jordan Mason, Isaac Guerrero, your thoughts?
Well, I'm hopeful. One, I think when you look at Kyle Shanahan and what he does in the running game, any running back seems to do well. We certainly saw that last week with Guerrero. Could have had 100 yards, ended up stopping just short of the goal line. Now, the Chiefs have been pretty good against the run, so I'm not exactly sure how well he will do, but we're hopeful.
Hopeful, but maybe not a big game, maybe more of a flex play.
Well, I actually faded the 49ers in their team total. It's at 23.5, which is crazy, right?
Yeah, for you?
First of all, last year I made a killing betting the over on the 49ers team total every single week. But I do think the only way that you can beat Patrick Mahomes, and this probably works in Guerrendo's favor, is that you have to control the time of possession, and you're going to do that through the run game. But the Chiefs are pretty good against the run, so...
Right.
We'll see.
Yeah, really hard to feel good about Isaac Guerrero. More of like, if you're stuck and if there's no Jordan Mason, he does make sense for Lamps. Real quick, Jamie, and this is impossible to do really quickly, so I'm putting you in a tight spot. I'm sorry about it. The Bucs running backs. Can you let me know how you rank them if they're all healthy, if Rashad White's out, the two situations?
White's in. I think he's the safest of the trio for his role in the passing game. If White is out, I think Bucky Irving's slightly ahead of Sean Tucker, but both guys will be a headache. All 3 guys would be a headache if they play. It would be, I think, just a void across the board because Baltimore's run defense clearly one of the best in football. Keep an eye on Mike Evans' injury because if Evans is out, then one of these guys factors in the passing game a little bit more. So Tucker, if there's no White clearly if there is no Mike Evans.
Would you like to see a graphic with Mike Evans in it with the injuries for wide receivers? Because here it comes. He's at the top of the list. And Jamie's right. The hamstring injury is rather significant for Mike Evans. The fact that he did not practice on Thursday. And that's one you're going to need to track all the way through the weekend because they play late Monday night. So you've got to keep your eyes on Mike Evans and his status. If you're nervous about him going into the game, you need to have an alternate that you might have to start on Sunday. Marvin Harrison, limited with a concussion. He did practice. That's good news. Deontay Johnson did practice on Friday. So I'd say his chances are pretty good for making it to the matchup on Sunday. The Rams, Jamie, Cooper Kupp, Jordan Whittington. Kupp's been limited. If he comes back this week, do you rush him right back into lineups or do you take it easy with him?
I think he's a number 2 receiver. He's not a top 10 guy, but he has that upside. It's a great matchup against the Raiders, as we know. If he's out, then you're looking at Whittington and Tutu Atwell as both being in play. Hopefully Whittington's healthy. He's just gotten a lot more chances in the last 2 games. Atwell's obviously seen an uptick since really Puka and Kupp have gone down, so he's kind of the safer of the 2. But Whittington, I think, has just a slight more upside from a PPR standpoint. The one thing that I think, just to go back to Mike Evans, you got 2 Monday night games there, so there are some options to replace him if you are stuck. You got Rashad Bateman, who's done a nice job for Baltimore. They're playing Monday night. You also have Michael Wilson, who may step up in the absence of Marvin Harrison Jr. if he can't go. So you got a couple guys that are available on waivers that have been productive.
How many double Monday night games are we going to have this year?
Not that many, but they're cool when they happen because
Yeah.
it's fun to watch and go back and forth between the two. Deebo Samuel's been practicing with a non-contact jersey. I know you told me about that one. And then Juju Smith-Schuster popped up on the injury report on Thursday. We'll see what he looks like on Friday. If he practices, good to go as low-end number 2 fantasy wide receiver. And then good news at wide receiver, Malik Neighbors expected to play. Devontae Adams expected to play. Amari Cooper expected to play. Cooper's not hurt. He was just traded. So was Devontae. Those guys should be good to go. Tight end injuries, we'll just show you the list real quick. I don't know if there's anything major to be worried about beyond Dallas Goedert, who hasn't been practicing this week. If he's out, that's obviously good news for both Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Evan Ingram was a monster last week for fantasy managers. Would expect him to be in line for fewer targets, but still good production. T.J. Hawkinson's probably going to sit on your bench for a little bit longer. Dalton Kincaid shed his non-contact jersey in practice on Friday. He should be good to go for his matchup against the Titans. Let's read a tweet before we go to break. Answer Jason's question. You can only start 2 of these 3 in PPR. Waddle, Worthy, Chubb. Jamie, who you sitting?
I'm sitting Worthy. You know, I'm hopeful that he's going to start to get going coming off the bye week, but I think we saw some signs of life from Tyler Huntley, so hopefully Waddle can have a good opportunity against a bad matchup with the Colts. And I think Nick Chubb's going to fall in the end zone. I don't know he's going to have a lot of work. I don't think he's going to have a huge game, but we know the Bengals' run defense is certainly the worst part of that defense, and they are just so excited to get Nick Chubb back. He's excited to get back, and so hopefully he is at 100% or close to it, and he can go out there and have a strong
So a
performance.
Chubb anytime touchdown.
Oh, I would play that one.
Yeah,
Sure.
that sounds really good. And that offensive line is in good shape as well. Okay, when we come back, we will get to starts and sits. A lot at that quarterback position, including Jamie Eisenberg's start of the week. Don't go anywhere. We're just rolling right now on Fantasy Football Today. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today. It's time to rank some players at quarterback and running back to help you get ready for week number 7 in the National Football League. Let's start with 3 quarterbacks that probably we would have never guessed we would consider starting over each other. One of them is Patrick Mahomes. And when the season started, we all thought, oh yeah, Patrick Mahomes is going to be awesome. But now we're thinking about starting Sam Darnold over Patrick Mahomes. Now we're thinking about starting Drake May over Patrick Mahomes. This is a real question. This is
That's
not
wild.
some sort of, this isn't a joke. Patrick Mahomes has been bad for fantasy. So now we're considering our options. And these are 2 players who either could still both be on the waiver wire. Maybe one of them is on the waiver wire in your league. So Katie, I know that you're going to get a bet ready for us involving these players. Jamie, rank these 3. Patrick Mahomes, Drake May, Sam Darnold.
Darnold is the easy one, and who would have thought that, you know, given Mahomes is one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history, and May is one of the highest drafted quarterbacks this season, and Darnold's been a bust, you know, since coming into the NFL at USC, but he's had a very solid fantasy season, only one bad game so far, and he's got arguably not the best matchup. I think May's got the best matchup, but he's got a fairly good matchup. The Lions just losing Aiden Hutchinson, so I would take Darnold first. I would actually take May over Mahomes. May's best game so far this season is better than Mahomes' best game in the regular season over the last 2 years. And the only game that's comparable, Katie, cover your ears, is the Super Bowl game when Mahomes did face the 49ers. But I don't know if he has to be that guy. He could if he wants to. We know that in the fourth quarter. But I don't think he's going to do that over the course of the game. He's only got one game over 20 fantasy points this season. No games over 21 points. That's how bad he's been as a fantasy quarterback.
And it's going to sound even sillier to say this, but if he doesn't have Juju Smith-Schuster, I like him even less. But I agree with your order, Jamie. Sam Darnold is the one I like the best, especially without Hutchinson playing for the Lions. And Drake May, he didn't have a very clean game last week, but he showed you that he can run the football a little bit, so he can get you some rushing yards. And he had a perfect deep throw to Kayshon Boutte. And I think that he could end up being somebody as a throwaway, not throwaway, but like a deep league type of fantasy wide receiver that you can put on the bench. I like Demario Douglas a lot more, and Douglas is still out there in about half of CBS Sports leagues. But you mentioned the matchup for the Jaguars. 26 plus fantasy points to a quarterback in each of their last 4 games. That's why Drake May is a pretty good start. Okay, Katie, do you have a player prop for us?
I do, and it's who you were just talking about, Drake May and his passing yards. Good matchup.
I don't think it's going to be crazy high. I'm going to put it at like 235.
Okay.
Or I would say it's like 210.
Okay,
What's
so
the number?
the line is 204.5. I do like the over, which seems both of you are agreeing on. The Patriots offense is still the Patriots offense, but it moved a lot better with Drake May, 243 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, which you hadn't seen from them in a long time. And like you said, good matchup for him. The Jags give up the most passing yards per game at 276.7.
Yep.
They also allow the 4th highest completion percentage at about 70.8. So 204.5. I feel like Drake May can do this, so let's go over.
I will say the only concern could be if Ramondre's back and they do have a run game going, do they have to have him throw? Because they were chasing points in a big way in that game. So his playmaking will still be there.
Right.
Will his passing yards be there? That's the concern.
That's an interesting point.
It's still quite low at 204.5,
I agree.
though.
I agree.
So we're still going over this one.
Yeah, I think the over is a smart play. Absolutely. We asked you guys on X to vote for who you liked best of these quarterbacks, and here are the results. And look at that. Sam Darnold, the runaway winner, 54.5% of the vote. Mahomes second. You guys just are not ready to trust Drake May. Let's do it again. 3 more quarterbacks. Katie, get a bet ready. Here are the names. Jared Goff, Anthony Richardson, and Aaron Rodgers. And I feel like all these guys have potential to be top 10 fantasy quarterbacks, maybe even like top 5. But none of them are ranked in our top 10. You can see in the consensus, 12th for Richardson, 15th for Rodgers, 16th for Goff. Jamie, how do you have these guys ranked?
Richardson is first. Goff is slightly behind him. I think Richardson's upside could be amazing this week. You know, he was on his way to a good game against the Steelers when he got hurt, and we know what he's capable of, especially in a game while the Dolphins are actually number 1 in fewest fantasy points allowed to opposing quarterbacks, but that's because teams run on them. Well, what's Richardson probably going to do? He's going to run on them. So this may be one of his better running games. I would take Goff over Rodgers. Potential shootout against the Vikings. The Vikings defense has been great, but so has Goff, 31 fantasy points or more in each of his last 2 games. And I'm a little concerned about Rodgers. I know he's getting Devontae Adams. It's still the Steelers' defense. He's gotten production from a second receiver almost all season long, whether it's been Wilson and Lazard or Conklin mixing in. So it's not like Devontae Adams is coming in and just putting them over the top to a level that you're going to say, okay, Rodgers is now safe. The Steelers' defense is still really good, so he's a distant third for me.
That's interesting. I think they're all very close to each other. I'll take Goff first. I think it's really close. We know what his upside is, and we've seen it the last 2 weeks. Huge numbers for Jared Goff without him having to throw a lot. And I know the Vikings pass rush can get after him. I think he can overcome that. We talked about it on our podcast on Friday. Look it up on YouTube, Fantasy Football Today, same name as this show, that Jared Goff has great numbers when he's under pressure. And the thing that I like about Richardson is that there's no Jonathan Taylor. So maybe that doesn't mean more rushing. But the thing that I don't like about Richardson is that we still haven't seen enough of him as a passer to totally trust him. I'm really curious to see what our audience thinks. I've got Rodgers in the middle. But Katie, what's your bet among these 3 guys?
So I'm looking at Jared Goff and his passing yards.
I think it'll be relatively high. Let's call it 250, like right on the nose.
Okay.
I'll say 230.
All right, 252.5
so we're kinda
is what the
under
line
on
is.
that.
I like the over on this one. Like you said, Goff's been on fire, 315 pass yards last week versus the Cowboys. He was a perfect 18 for 18 versus Seattle the week before. He's gone over this number in 10 of his last 12 games, actually averages far over this at 274. Of course, when he plays indoors, we see that number hike up a little bit more. And we know that Brian Flores is going to throw a ton of blitz packages at him.
Yep.
But Jared Goff has thrived against the blitz this year. He has passer rating of 137.5 versus the blitz. So I don't see too big of a problem for him as well.
Let's see how the audience voted for these 3 quarterbacks. I expect it to be close. I expect this to be not close at all. Jared Goff, the runaway winner.
He's the safest of the 3. I mean, you know, Rodgers has got 4 interceptions in his last 2 games, and we just don't know if a 31-year-old Devontae Adams makes him that much better. And clearly Richardson is the biggest wild card because he could be QB1 this week. That's how good he could be against the Dolphins team that has no edge rushers right now. They have nobody to pressure the quarterback, and his running could be dominant this week. The one thing I will say about Goff, and this makes me a little concerned about his passing yards. This could be a multiple touchdown game for him. Blake Cashman's most likely not going to play for the Vikings.
Yeah, he's out.
They are going to run all over Minnesota like they always do. So will he have 30-plus attempts? Will he have 35-plus attempts? Or will he be 25 to 28 attempts again? And that just limits the upside that much from a yardage perspective. So he'll need probably a big Jameson play, which is always on the table.
Yeah.
We saw last time against Dallas, he had a big Laporta play. So those chances are still there for him. I think the over is the smarter play, just because it is Goff and this defense. But I would not be surprised if this is a big Montgomery, big Gibbs game, and then we get a couple touchdowns on top of that for Jared Goff.
You mentioned those running backs. Those guys are must-starts, and we know those guys are going to play in the game. there are so many moving parts at running back right now that we're shortchanging you just a little bit on starts and sits at running back because we just don't know who's healthy. And it's kind of reflected in the rank, these three that we're going to show you right now at the running back position. We know Kareem Hunt's going to play, and we know that Najee Harris is going to play, and we think that Antonio Gibson might not be the only running back in New England. When I brought this up to the crew, it didn't look like Ramondre was going to play. So obviously, Jamie, you can just say it. If Ramondre plays, where does he rank amongst these running backs?
So if Ramondre plays and, clean bill of health, he would be first for me, and then Hunt, and then Harris. If it's the way that we have it right here, it would be Hunt, Gibson, Harris.
That would be if Ramondre's out.
That would be if Ramondre's out. So I do think Gibson's going to have an opportunity to have his best game. Clearly, the Jaguars matchup is the most appealing, one of the best matchups on the table. He just has not done a lot of great things with his work this year. He was better in tandem with Ramondre than he was last week, for example, against Houston. Hunt's matchup scares me. I mean, the 49ers run defense is great. And you have the wild card now of Clyde Edwards-Helaire back. So will he play on passing downs? Will he take some rushing opportunities away from Kareem Hunt? I think he's still a number 2 running back, but we are going to see maybe not the same level of work for Hunt, which is what is appealing to him right now, because I don't think he's going to necessarily have a lot of breakaway runs or breakaway plays. And then Najee, coming off his best game since his rookie season by far, was awesome against the Raiders, but it was the Raiders. And the Jets' run defense, I know they gave up some numbers to Ray Davis last week. Najee makes me a little bit concerned. The one wrinkle is, as we talked to our buddy Robert Turbin last time on Wednesday's show here, is that Wilson, if he's the starter, will throw the ball to his running backs more so than Justin Fields did.
Right, because he won't take off and run and be selfish like Justin Fields was. I really don't mean to call him selfish. It's just how it goes sometimes. The running backs don't get passes, but now Russ could. And that could help Najee in PPR. But the Steelers' offense just kind of scares me overall. This transition from Fields to Wilson seems ill-timed to me. It seems strange. Katie, do you have a bet to let us know about?
Yes, I'm looking at Kareem Hunt, but his receiving yards.
Oh, I don't think there'll be very many receiving yards for Kareem Hunt.
12.5.
Yeah, I would guess it's lower than that. I'll call it 10, even 10.
Okay, well, the line is 14.5, and I like the over, actually, on this one.
Ooh, okay.
So he's caught at least one reception in all of the games coming back with the Chiefs. He's gone over this number, or right at this number, at like 15 and 16 in the last 2 games. But the Niners have been a little bit weaker. 2 running backs in the receiving game. They give up 42 yards per game to the position. With Rice out, I do see Mahomes, having more of an opportunity for Kareem Hunt in the short passing game. And when I was looking at one of our research packets this week, I found it very interesting to see that Mahomes, 65% of his pass yards are coming after the catch. It's the most since 2006. I think this opens things up for Kareem Hunt, so I'm taking this over 14.5.
So he's become Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy's become Mahomes.
Hell yeah, baby. You heard it. You heard it.
Without the rings.
Right. Well,
Hey, because you still got to beat Patrick Mahomes, unfortunately.
they might come eventually for the 49ers.
I just think
he does have a nice long
Please,
career.
God.
I do think with Clyde there, though, that could be a problem. So if Clyde does play on passing downs, then Kareem Hunt may not be on the field.
And I agree with you. Ramondre, if he's healthy, is better than all the running backs that we named. But I implore you, go look at our rankings. On Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're going to keep them up to date on CBSSports.com, so you'll know who we like to start and sit at the running back position. Before we go to break, let's see what the Twitter results were for this group of 3. And it's Kareem Hunt, another runaway winner at 46%. Gibson was second, but remember, at the time that this poll was put out, there was no Ramondre Stevenson on the radar to play in week number 7. Now it looks very much like he's on the radar. Najee Harris is third on the list.
Stevenson did say, I should be ready to play.
That's good.
So
and I saw a video of him practicing, and he looked pretty good practicing.
He told reporters I should be ready to play.
We could have Ramondre Stevenson back in our lives. Let's answer a question from X before we go to break. It's a trade evaluation from Andrew. He's giving away DJ Moore and either Tracy or Charbonnet for McLaurin. You like this trade, Jamie?
I feel like Moore and McLaurin are almost a wash. Tyrone Tracy still. So Brian Daboll came out today and said that Singletary is going to play, but Tracy's earned a role. I forget the phrasing, but he's not going off the field after what he's done in the last 2 games. So I almost think I'd rather hold, because if Singletary misses any more time, the combination of Moore and Tracy is better than what McLaurin has. McLaurin's playing really well right now. Obviously, Jaden Daniels on a different level, but Caleb Williams is coming, and you still got McLaurin's bye. Moore's going to come off his bye, so I'd probably hold.
There was a good question about wide receivers. Why don't we do some starts and sits and some player props with wide receivers? We'll do that next here on Fantasy Football Today. Welcome back to FFT. A couple of injury updates to give you at the wide receiver position. Mike Evans did not practice on Friday. Neither did Michael Pittman. These are two injuries that you should keep an eye on leading into their matchups. Pittman playing on Sunday, Evans on Monday. If we see Evans practicing on Saturday, we will let you know on CBSSports.com. And now let's talk about some starts and sits at the wide receiver position. I'm going to give Jamie 3 players. Jamie's going to rank them. Katie's going to find a player prop or something cool related to these players, and we'll talk about them for you to help you win in week number 7. So, Jamie, here we go with 3 wide receivers for you to rank. It's Tank Dell, it's Brian Thomas Jr., and it's Jameson Williams. 3 guys with a lot of deep speed, but I don't know if they've got a lot of high upside in full PPR. How do you see them?
Oh, I think they got a lot of upside in PPR. I mean, you've seen it throughout the course of the season. Dell recently, but Thomas and Williams fairly consistently. I'm going to go with Thomas first. I'm going to go Dell second and Williams third. Thomas, I think, just most upside of this group based on what we saw. It's a great matchup. I know Christian Gonzalez may follow him, but I don't think Gonzalez is at that level yet that you're sitting someone of Thomas's upside in that matchup yet. Dell last week, first time season high in targets. No Nico Collins, scored a touchdown, so hopefully that's a game to build off of in what should be a shootout against the Packers. And Williams also in a potential shootout. You just don't like the targets have been down for him really since week 3, but he's been productive in all but one game this season, and I think there's still the chance for him to do that in his matchup against Minnesota. So I love all 3 of these guys, but give me Thomas ahead of the group.
I love all 3 of them as well, and I have them ranked exactly the same way as you do, and I'm going to keep using Tank Dell and Brian Thomas as number 2 wide receivers, and Dell, until Nico Collins is back, he's going to be locked into my lineups. Katie Mox, what are you thinking with these 3 receivers?
Well, we're on the same page here. I'm looking at Tank Dell and his receiving yards.
And this number, could be sky high. It could be 80, 90, but I bet this player prop is going to be right around 55 yards. I'm going to say 65 yards for Tank Dell.
I was going to say 65 also. I'll go a little lower just to have some variance. So I'll go 61.5.
Yeah, well, okay, so you're closer. The line is at 59 and a half yards. And I do like the over for this. He had 57 yards last week, but really it was a bad game for CJ Stroud, under 200 passing yards, which is kind of not like him. The 2 previous games before that, he had 331 passing yards in those games. So I do think the volume increases here. Dave, you talked about how it'll be a little bit of a shootout, or maybe that was Jamie that talked about it. I think that's it. This Green Bay pass defense is opportunistic, right? They could get a lot of takeaways, but I think that they're beatable, and CJ Stroud certainly can beat them. So I feel like the targets are going to be up for Tank Dell. So I like him over the 59.
I think he goes over this. The one thing about Stroud, though, just thinking about it, his games, there's only been 2 of them, yardage has been minimal with Joe Mixon.
Yeah,
and he hasn't had a run game in the other games. Dario Gumbawale and Cam Akers, those guys can't run to the same level that Mixon does. So Mixon maybe changes the outlook for CJ Stroud a little bit. We had a interesting conversation on our podcast today, and we didn't get a chance to talk to our colleague Heath Cummings, who has him at 16. So he's really concerned about Stroud. I'm a little bit higher than him at 10, and Dave's got him as a top 5 guy. So Stroud with Mixon may not be the high-end play that we've been seeing, at least for the last year plus.
I think it's going to be a shootout.
I agree, but
it could be a high-scoring game. And we've seen Stroud in high-scoring games, and he's amazing in them. I think that could absolutely be the case. Let's see what the audience thinks. We asked them who they liked of these 3 wide receivers, and they agree with, they like Tank Dell better than Brian Thomas. Jamie and I do like Brian Thomas better than Tank Dell. We can all agree that Jameson Williams, in this case, is 3rd on the list. Let's move on to the next group of 3. And these are guys who are definitely PPR superstars. Demario Douglas, taking on the Jaguars. You've got Wan'Dale Robinson against the Eagles, and Jackson Smith and Jigba against Atlanta. Jamie, what are you thinking with these 3? Who do you like the best? Who do you like the least?
I'd be surprised if people are going against Wan'Dale Robinson at this point. Even in bad games, he's still gotten you 10-plus PPR points, and there haven't been very many bad games. Now, you have Andrew Thomas out for the Giants, so the offensive line is weaker. But the secondary for the Eagles has certainly been a spot that teams have been able to exploit. And so with Neighbors back, he's going to get a lot of attention. We know what Robinson has done with Neighbors on the field. And I'm going to start him of this trio if I had to make a choice. JSN would be next. And there is something to play here. If Tyler Lockett is out, that bumps up the value for JSN even more. But 2 of his last 3 games, he's been 13 PPR points. Again, a down game was 10 PPR points for him. The production has been fairly consistent. This matchup against Atlanta is one of the better ones on the table and a sneaky one, but it's really for number 1 wide receivers. And DK Metcalf should go off this week. But I think JSN has a big game as well. And then Douglas just really popped off last week with Drake May. But He's been 9 targets on the dot in 3 of his last 4 games. So they've been trying to get him going and may finally put him over the top. Great matchup against Jacksonville. So all 3 of these guys are potential starters in 3 receiver leagues, but in 2 receiver leagues, the only one I'm comfortable starting is Wan'Dale.
I really like Douglas in full PPR, but that's with Ramondre Stevenson out. If Ramondre Stevenson plays, I think that he could take work away from Demario Douglas. Remember, Douglas is more of a short area target than anything else, not somebody, he can win downfield. I just don't think the Patriots use him in that way.
But Gerard Mayo did say that they may start to use him in 2 receiver sets a little bit more, which would change how some of his routes are run.
It's all good, but the combination of Stevenson being back, Drake May running when he's under pressure, and the fact that May did connect on some deeper throws without Demario Douglas. He was winning on slants, Douglas was. I just wonder if that target volume will still be there. So for the purposes of this segment, sure, I'll say that Demario Douglas is the best in full PPR, but it's really, really close between these 3. And in the case of Wan'Dale, Neighbors is back. Now there's 2 running backs in New York. What if they keep the game close? Maybe Wan'Dale Robinson doesn't get the same type of huge target volume that we want him to have, and he underwhelms a little bit like he did last week. Katie, you saw the names. What are you thinking here for betting?
So I'm looking at Wan'Dale Robinson's receptions. Kind of plays into
Yeah, it definitely does. And that's like the name of his game.
7.
Yeah, I think it'll be close to that. I'll take 6. I'm curious what that number. I bet the number's 5.5.
It is 5.5. But here's the thing: we're getting really good value on this at plus 110. So for me,
All right.
This is a really good value.
So if I give
play.
you my mortgage, you'll bet that for me? Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Give me your mortgage, and I will bet it on Wan'Dale Robinson at plus 110. Oh, look, he's gone over this in 4 games. He has been targeted, as you guys know, more than anyone. Well, not more than anyone. Garrett Wilson has more targets, but almost more than anyone in the NFL. With Neighbors being out, it's been very beneficial for him. Even though Neighbors is going to play at plus 110 to do what he's been doing, I just think it's too good to pass up.
Here's the only concern, and it's very, very minimal because you have a 4-game sample size of what it is. Did Darius Slayton do enough to earn more targets as the 3rd receiver? Did Theo Johnson do enough to earn a few more targets as the tight end there? And does Daniel Jones have to get the ball out of his hands quicker because of the offensive line being a little bit weaker? I don't think it matters. I think he's locked in on these 2 guys.
Yeah.
The slot receiver for Daniel Jones, from Sterling Shepard to Wan'Dale Robinson. I'm sure I'm missing somebody in there from a lot of injuries. He just leans on his slot receiver so much, and it's a staple of Brian Daboll's offense. I think we're looking at still a chance. He can get 10 receptions. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
The Eagles have been softer against slot receivers.
You could have just said softer and then stopped.
Yeah, that's true. They have just been soft, but allowing 31 catches on 48 targets.
I just wish somebody would take my mortgage. All right, let's see what the audience voted for.
Yeah, I wanted you to pay it, not
Give me your mortgage, by the way.
The audience likes Douglas. They're buying into what he did last week. It was a big game for him, and now he's taking on Jacksonville. I don't think we should overlook the matchup in the case of Demario Douglas. And if we like Drake May, this is the guy who theoretically would see the most targets from him. But it's not really that close. It's closer between Robinson and JSN. Let's just move on to the last group of 3 receivers. It's George Pickens versus Juju Smith-Schuster versus Christian Watson. Katie, get a bet ready. Jamie, rank these 3.
Assuming he's healthy, Juju is my favorite here. You know, I think what we saw in the game against the Saints prior to their bye, so week 5, 130 receiving yards, 8 targets, 7 receptions. You know, he was locked into basically the Rashee Rice role. And what you heard from Andy Reid was the guy playing opposite Travis Kelce is going to get an opportunity to make a lot of plays. And that was Juju. It was Juju in 2022. He wasn't as explosive as we saw in that game, but he did have 6 games of basically 14 PPR points or more, 13.9. And so I love the opportunity for him to be heavily involved against the 49ers. They play a lot of man. He's better against man than he is against zone. So I like the setup for him there. I'm torn between Watson and Pickens. I do think there's going to be a bump for Pickens with Russell Wilson starting. Now you have 2 injuries at play for the Jets. Michael Carter is out. DJ Reed is a game time decision. If Reed doesn't play and Carter's not there, Pickens could absolutely go nuclear. He could also have a 3 for 45 type of game because Russell Wilson could be all over the place and Pickens may not be interested in playing. So it's such a volatile scenario for him that it's not a must play. It's not a must sit. He's kind of Goldilocks. He's right in the middle. And then Watson, similar type of situation. He could blow up and have a huge game as well as a potential shootout against the Texans. But we also know that if he doesn't get that big play, doesn't score a touchdown, you're probably looking at minimal receptions for him. So I'm going to go Pickens ahead of Watson. They're both kind of similar. To me, Juju's the easy one. If he's healthy, I'm playing him, even in a tough matchup against San Francisco.
I have the same exact order. I think all 3 of these guys could be very volatile for fantasy managers. All right, Katie, which bet do you like the most from these 3 guys?
So here's the thing. I'm actually agreeing with you guys said, and these guys are all so volatile that I passed. I did not have a bet on any of these guys. I looked at their prop lines, and I didn't see a value because they could easily go over or go under. And one thing that Todd Furman said, who is our colleague colleague here and an extremely good sports bettor. The one advantage that sports bettors have over the books is we do not have to bet every single game. So I took a look at these three guys. I thought, I don't like any of them. I'm not going to waste my money or your mortgage on this one. So I'm passing.
Okay, no problem at all. Let's take a look at the poll results, see who you guys liked. And you guys like Juju. You're buying into him. And he's still out there in a fraction of CBS Sports leagues. I want to say like about a third of CBS Sports leagues. You can pick up Juju and start him this week. And
okay, just while we're on this, Brooke Pryor of ESPN reporting that George Pickens said he's been putting in extra work with Russell Wilson after practice more than usual. Quote, because this is his first start. So maybe George Pickens tipping the hand of what Mike Tomlin said, where he said he's going to keep this in-house in terms of the starters. George Pickens, he don't care.
Does that make you like Pickens more or less? I don't know.
It does make me like him more. I mean, look, Justin Fields has not been connecting with Pickens, and it's a tough matchup. But if those guys are missing in the secondary, it's a big opportunity for Pickens and Wilson to start to play well. So we could see this be the jumping off point of what we thought was going to be a breakout season for him.
Let's answer a question before we go to break, and here it is. It's from Kevin. Help me out this week, please. Pick three, non-PPR. It's Bigsby, Connor, Cook, Chubb, Montgomery. Jamie, which three are you picking?
One is easy. Shouldn't even be a consideration. David Montgomery, your must-start guy. I would go with a non-PPR, actually, Bigsby second if there is no Travis Etienne. And then I'm scared about James Conner this week. The Chargers' defense has been great against running backs. He played a season-low 16 snaps last week. So I'm going to go Cook over Conner for the third spot.
James Cook behind Bigsby?
James Cook is behind Bigsby, non-PPR.
Wow, okay. I'm curious about that one. I would have taken Cook over Bigsby, Montgomery over both. When we come back, Katie's got more player props for us. It's the BetMGM Player Prop Challenge here on Fantasy Football Today.
On FFT, it is time now for the prop challenge presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook that was born in Vegas. Here's a recap of week 6. Yeah, not the strongest.
It looks like there's some typos on that screen. Let's just get it off.
Adam Azer actually did better than all of us.
He didn't even make any bags.
Exactly. 2 and 3 for Dave and I, 1 and 4 for Jamie. But Jamie has a message for someone on his board when the camera comes back out here.
There it is.
Who are Mike and Eric?
Two of my buddies that are watching. They always watch our show. So
okay. Hi, Mike. Hi, Eric.
I'm glad somebody's buddies watch. Thanks for nothing, Matt.
Hey. Okay.
That's a jerk.
So if you haven't watched before, the prop challenge is I will give out a player and you guys will guess what it is. So Saquon Barkley receiving yards.
I don't think I can fit so many zeros on this board.
Okay. 34 for Dave. 35. All right. You guys are both on the money with me. The line is at 14.5. Actually, very low. Love the over in this game. Revenge spot for Barkley. He's got 82 rushing yards. That's what the line is. Feels like that might be a little bit too much for me. So I do think that the receiving yards is the way to go here. All right. Moving quickly. Brock Bowers receiving yards.
Going up against the Rams. I think they're going to have to chase points.
65 for Jamie, 70 for Dave. The line is 60.5. I like the over along with you guys. Now that there's no Devontae Adams, who else are they throwing to, right? He's their best pass catcher.
There might not be any Jacoby Myers
There might not be any Jacoby Myers.
Number 1 in targets. We're talking about potentially a top 3 fantasy tight end rest of the season.
Yeah, well, because
maybe the number 1 tight end when we're drafting in 2025.
Yeah, and the Rams have been super vulnerable against tight ends this year. They have 91% catch rate, so love that.
Wow.
Moving on to Geno Smith completions.
Geno Smith completions. I swear you just said that.
24 for Jamie. 29 for you. Okay, so it's 24.5. So you're like,
I'll take the over. I'll go one over.
Oh, we'll go over. Yeah.
Wait, is that allowed in this game? He said 24. Does that mean he's locked into the under?
24.5. I mean, well, I'll give it to him.
Okay, fine.
I'll give it to him.
Fine.
We all need it after last week, okay? I like the over as well. Look, I don't think that the Falcons will have any problem run up the score here. So he's going to be playing from behind and throwing the ball quite a bit.
First game with multiple passing touchdowns happens this week.
Yeah, I agree with that. And he leads the NFL in pass attempts per game. 41 pass attempts per game. The number was 24.5?
24.5. Falcons have also allowed opposing quarterbacks to get 26 plus.
That defense is a little overrated.
Okay, Breece Hall rush yards.
Ooh, and he's going up against the Steelers.
Okay, 58 and 47. The line is 62.5. I agree with you guys. I'm going under on this one. He struggled against good rush defenses. Steelers have been elite, and I think the Jets should be able to move the ball a lot better with both Wilson and Devontae Adams.
Yeah,
now.
it makes sense that he would see a little bit less work with Adams there now.
All right, Travis Kelce receiving yards against the 49ers. Something he does well in his career.
I wonder how high this number is.
Okay, 65 for Jamie,
Jamie's just gonna use
74.
65 for everybody.
Well, the line is 60.5, so you guys are both right on the money. I like this over, unfortunately, for my 49ers as well. He just plays so well against the 49ers. 93 receiving yards in 3 of the last 4 matchups per game is what he's had. And the 49ers have been getting cooked by tight ends this season. They gave up 6 receptions to both McBride and Noah Fant as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's
Just put 4
absolutely
guys
locked
on him.
in.
Put 4 guys on him.
But
Well, then Xavier Worthy's scoring a lot of touchdowns.
Well, then the Juju Smith-Schuster,
Yeah,
we're going
right.
to hammer all of his. Yeah, I mean, I do, yeah, we're going to go to Ask FFT now. I don't need to get into my thoughts on this matchup here. All right, grade the trade. Sent Swift and Dowdle, received James Cook and Bucky. Dave.
I think it's fair. I know that I like Cook more than Swift, but it's really close between those two. I just don't know what you're going to get out of Bucky compared to what Dowdle might be if Dallas gets their act together.
Yeah, I'm going to give a slight edge to the Swift side just because I think Swift is coming on and has been better than Cook in the last 3 weeks.
That's true.
And you have the schedule is going to be amazing for Rico Dowdle. As long as they don't add another running back, I think that side's a little bit safer.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, more Ask FFT questions. You're watching Fantasy Football Today on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back. We asked you to tweet us some questions this morning. Jessica's got one. Have R. White as my RB2. If he plays, should I go with him, Sermon, Godson, or Guerrero if Mason is out? Guerrero, I think she means there.
She meant
Yeah.
Guerrero. I think I would settle for Rashad White here, assuming it's full PPR.
I actually would lean towards Sermon. I know it's not pretty, but the Dolphins' run defense is so bad. So bad.
So bad. All right, Jessica, those are your marching orders. Now, Pat, flex, Juju, Jameson, Bigsby, or Chandler, full PPR. Thanks, Dave.
I will take Juju if he's healthy. If he's somehow not playing on Sunday, I'll start. Am I starting Bigsby? Okay, there's a lot of ifs here. If Juju's healthy, he's my guy. If he's out, and if ETN is out, then Bigsby's my guy. If ETN is in, then Jameson's my guy. There's no way Chandler is going to be my guy.
My head is spinning with that answer. Jamie?
Agree.
Okay, agree. Pat, whatever that means, you go ahead and do it here. Next question. Okay, this one's from RD. I have MHJ and a couple leagues, and I'm afraid I'm too invested in him. Are better days ahead, or should I package him up in a trade? Jamie.
It definitely would not be a bad idea to try and trade him if you can, but his value is low right now because he's injured and coming off a bad game. If he has a good game, then you should try and trade him. He's still got the opportunity to be a top 10 fantasy receiver. I just wish that they would have him run a few different routes and give him a few more targets.
He's got the Chargers this week if he plays, and then Arizona's at Miami in week 8. If he's back and he has a big game in week 8, that's when you offload Harrison Jr. before he takes on the Bears in week 9, the Jets in week 10, and has a bye in week 11.
So hold on to him for now.
Hold on, wait for that big game, and then dump him.
And all right, next question. Where do I rank Tyrone Tracy Jr. with or without Singletary? Is it a start option, Jamie?
Tracy will be a flex if Singletary plays. If Singletary is out, which we know is not going to be the case, then Tracy's got top 20 upside. So plan on Tracy and Singletary as flexes. Unfortunately, Singletary should be slightly ahead of Tracy.
Agreed.
Agreed. One last question before we get out of here. Okay. Grade the trade, PPR. Give up Tank Dell and Zach Moss. Receive David Montgomery.
Love it if you get Montgomery.
100%.
100%. Love it if you get Montgomery. That's going to do it for us today on Fantasy Football Today. Thanks for joining us. We are here every Friday. Dave, what was it? What was the tagline?
Every Friday, we're here to help you win your league and cash your bets.
And dominate the books, I thought was a part of it.
I
and
changed
dominate the books. You can watch
Cash
now.
bets, dominate books, means the same thing. Go win.
Go win. Scan the QR code on your screen there.
The show ended 10 minutes ago.
And goodbye. And goodbye.